Hey, what's up? Happy Friday, everybody. I want to talk today on the live stream about llms.txt, which I know it's been out there. People are talking about it. Clients are asking us whether they need one, how do they get one, how do we set it up. So I want to talk today about what that is and why we would care about it and how to generate one. I'm going to be slightly distracted for a couple of seconds here because I want to get everything set up to share you. But okay. But let's do some sharing and talk about this. So first, I'm going to start by talking about what an llms.txt actually is. Let me share my screen. Okay. So this is a good place, I think, to look. I know it's just a lot of Markdown. And you may not even know what Markdown is. You'd be like, well, what is Markdown? What is this thing that we're looking at? So Anthropic, which is the creator of Claude, the beloved LLM and chatbot, etc., suggested this standard. What llms.txt really is in some important ways is a standard. It's a way of structuring a file to do a thing. And it's a set of rules for doing a thing. And so you may have heard of, even if you don't know what llms.txt is, you may have heard of robots.txt. Here is Google's own robots.txt. You may have heard of this. You may have heard of sitemap.xml. Here's sitemap.xml. You may know that this is important for search. So llms.txt is just another way of thinking about structuring your data in such a way that it can be easily parsed by a machine. It's a standard, it's this thing by Claude. There's a whole lot of documentation on it that you can read, but that's the fundamental thing that you need to know about llms.txt. And like all these other things, like, oops, and I never added this to the stage, so y'all couldn't see anything I was talking about. Let's rewind real quick. So here's an example. I'm going to show you another example of what it looks like. I'm going to show you Anthropic's own example one more time. Here's the example that I meant to show a minute ago and did not show, and I'm so sorry about that. So that's one example. And then here's another one. Here's robots.txt, if you have not seen it before. Let's bring that up again, robots.txt. Okay, great. Hopefully that's working and you can see it. And then here's sitemap.xml. And all of these things, like I just said a minute ago, kind of structure important information for machines. So that's why all of this is important. And so llms.txt is another example. Okay, I've gone back and sort of fixed the screen sharing thing. Thanks for bearing with me on that. Great. So given that this exists, the next question is like, okay, so is it a thing? Like, we know that robots.txt is important because it tells Google and other site crawlers whether they should index the site and which pages to pay attention to, and what they're allowed to do and what not to do. We know that robots.txt is important. We're pretty sure that sitemap.xml is important. We have had tons of clients who have said to us, hey, this page isn't being indexed, it's not showing up, it's not performing. And when we make sure it's in the sitemap.xml, this file that gives Google information about what files to crawl and what to index, when we make that change, it makes a difference. So we know that these files often work. And now there's this new one called llms.txt. And do we need it? Lots of clients have been asking us about it. So let's talk about the theory behind llms.txt next. So the theory behind llms.txt is that if we do this thing, if we share this type of file in a new format, it will be a lot easier for for LLMs to understand what context they should be paying attention to on the site. So if we do this, it makes it faster, it makes it easier for them to understand what's really important, and so on. And there's a lot to that. Like, one obvious example I could think of is, I don't know anybody offhand, we don't have any clients at the moment who render their entire site with JavaScript We have lots of clients who partially render sites with JavaScript and stuff like that, but AI crawlers, as far as we know, don't render JavaScript. So this might be a really important way to show information about your site in a way that's parsable by a browser that can't read JavaScript, which is the bot that an AI indexer might be using. So that's could be an obvious use case. Another one could be you have a million files, you have a million use cases or documentation or whatever it is, and somebody needs to know how to organize that. Now, a human being is going to go on and have a specific place that they're trying to go. They're trying to look for this use case, that piece of functionality. But an AI bot, an AI crawler is indexing the entire site. And so maybe they could use some help knowing what's more important. So that's the theory, is this is another way of sort of bridging that human machine divide so that machines know more context on what you have on your site. So that's another thing. Okay, so in theory, it's interesting. We know what it is, but now let's talk about whether it is actually effective or not. So a lot of people shared this thing, this blue sky. It's called a skeet, I think. I'm making myself sound extremely uncool, but I don't love that term. A blue sky tweet was shared by John Mueller, who is the search liaison. Everybody knows him in the SEO community. And he said with a lot of confidence a few months ago, no AI system currently uses llms.txt. Don't bother with this. Doesn't really make sense. Google doesn't use it. And note that John works at Google, so he's not necessarily speaking for Anthropic, Claude, the creators of llm.txt. He's certainly not necessarily speaking for OpenAI. So, but this is an important piece of data because he's also making the claim here that no AI system currently uses llms.txt. And I found myself very persuaded by that. A few months ago, gosh, not a few months ago, a month ago, amazing how fast we're moving right now. I sort of saw this and I was on the fence. I said, okay, John Mueller says that we're not supposed to be using it or that it's not useful. Okay, fine. But then I came across this really great article, and there are lots of articles like this, but there's some data here. And this is by a company called Mintlify, and they literally wrote an article, how often do LLMs visit llms.txt? And one of the things that they found was that, and just to be really clear, everybody's got a vested interest here, and Mintlify is no different. They're a product for documentation teams, and this is potentially a place that's very useful for them to have functionality around this and to have their customers use this. So everybody's got a horse in this race. But if you scroll down on this blog post, you can see that LLMs or somebody is actually visiting this file. Now there's a separate thing called llms.full.txt, which I'll only spend a second on right now. And I will mention that just to say llms.full.txt is a file that is a complete copy of all of your documentation. That's very easy for a crawler to pull down, and it's useful for tools that help developers code locally, because then they have access to all their documentation, all your documentation around the computer. So that llms.full.txt we're not going to talk about right now, but that's the theory there, and that to me seems like potentially very useful as well. But llms.txt, let's go back, find the tab that I was on. It actually got visited here. So that to me is very different from what John Mueller is saying. And that indicates to me that, either I'm missing something important here or this is potentially actually useful. So what I've started to think about now with clients is, we should probably try to produce these and put them up. Now, here's the other problem with llms.txt, is that llms.txt, as you can imagine, let's look at Vercels, for example. Or let's look at, Vercel doesn't, let's see, let's look at, let me find a good one. Let's look at Anthropics. Let's look at Anthropics again. Here's Anthropic. You can imagine that this thing is a pain to produce and to keep up to date. And if you're not careful, it just becomes another thing that's out there and another thing you have to maintain, another thing that can be out of date. And so even if it's working for you, it's something that might be working against you. If it's working for you because it was a great idea for us to have a special file for LLMs, awesome, but then it also has outdated information, so we're prioritizing stuff that doesn't matter for LLMs. Fantastic. And we all know this thing. We create a content asset, we add a process, we do something, it goes out of date. There's no budget for maintenance. So that is a problem. And sitemap XML files have been around for such a long time, and there's lots of ways to generate those automatically. Robots.txt doesn't need to be updated in that way. A lot of these files we have solutions for, but this is brand new and it's like super early, and maybe it's going to get replaced by something else. So the next thing that I think about with llms.txt is I mostly think it makes sense if you can get someone else to generate it for you. So we generate these files for our clients and try to keep them up to date. But you can also do it yourself if you want to. And there are a few different ways that you can do that. So one is, I'm going to show you one of these. There are tons of these coming out. Share this tab instead. llms.txt generator, lots of these. This is a really useful one. And if somebody can remind me who shared this, I will credit them. And I'm so sorry to the person who built this one. But you put in your project information, description, purpose, instructions for LLMs, all kinds of other stuff. Now, I can't vouch for the output of this. That's the other problem, right? Is you need the LLM to parse your site correctly, and there probably needs to be a human involved, and who knows what you're going to get out of that, right? In this case, you're using an LLM to generate an llms.txt to give context. So, can't vouch for this particular, but this is a way you can do it. You can try it out and see. And this is built on Lovable. And if you like Lovable, you can build your own llms.txt generator if you're looking for a big project to do. So that's one way you can do it. You can revisit this and keep it up to date. Another way you can do it, and a way that we have been experimenting with, is to build an AI workflow for generating llms.txt. The reason this isn't as hacky as it sounds is that I am giving context. I'm giving additional context. And so the LLM is going to take that context and put it into a format that it itself understands. So yes, this is very Ouroboros, snake eating its own tail type of stuff, but I think in this case, it's okay. And so what we do here is we have a scraper that goes through, you put in a URL, and we have a scraper that goes through, gets URLs, pulls stuff for use cases, summarizes a value prop, returns the URL of the blog, gets all the latest blog and summarizes them and all this stuff. And one thing we've been working on is upgrading these with agents that do these things sort of automatically and keep it up to date. We can talk about that some other time. I think agents of various types will become more and more important for content marketers and people who care about websites. But that's how we do it. Here's the sort of summary of all this stuff. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. What is an llms.txt? Answered that question. It's this file that lives in the root of your site, and it's like a robots.txt or a sitemap.xml, and it's a way of structuring information so that a certain type of machine can get clearer instructions than it might otherwise get. Does it work? Is it used? We think that it is used. The trade-off for you is not, is this worth my time or not? Because sure, it's worth your time if you had an infinite amount of time. It's more like everything else, where what should I deprioritize or reprioritize for this? If you're not measuring LLM visibility today, then probably you should solve that problem before you try to do llms.txt. If you have website issues, if you haven't figured out, there are a lot of foundational things that you should have in place. If you don't have somebody who can generate this for you or a way to generate it quickly, that to me says, still wait a little bit if you've got other stuff going on. Don't spend a day on this. If you have an agency that can do it for you, great. If you have a generator that you can use, awesome. If you feel like you can knock it out in half an hour, absolutely give it a shot, or an hour. Then totally, like, it makes sense. But otherwise, still pay attention and see. At some point, I think the tooling will get better and they'll get easier to generate. And when somebody asks you, why don't we have an llms.txt, you can tell them either we're working on it because we figured out a way to sort of knock it out, or, it's on the list. We know it's a thing, but here are the other priorities that are outweighing it right now. And as you wait, the tooling, I think, around this will get better and they'll get faster to generate for folks who don't have somebody who can do it for them. So thanks for joining me today. I'm still amazing. This is session 3, and I'm still learning how to use this screen share tool. So sorry for anybody who was on and was kind of like, what is he talking about? What is he showing? Sorry, but it did get better. And let me know questions. You can leave them here. I'll try to answer any questions I got left afterwards. You can always DM me. You can always reach out, aircule.com. We actually just got that domain, which I'm super excited about. So you'll also notice it's aircule.co. But that'll probably change at some point later this summer. Awesome. Have a great weekend. See ya.